Have you ever felt overwhelmed, anxiety, tension, wanting to pull your hair out sometimes? I'm sure that we all have felt this way at a point in our life. It turns out all these factors is related to stress. Since we are all students here, we tend to accumulate stress over time. Well, with the benefit of exercise, it can help you mentally. As college students, it is important for us to have some sort of physical activity embedded in our schedule. Today I would like to share that how exercise can help you with school, what counts as exercise, how exercising can boost your brain functions. First, I would like to talk about what counts as exercise. There's two types of exercises. There's moderate and there's vigorous. So what is moderate exercise? A moderate intensity activity is anything that gets your heart rate above 50 to 60% above the resting rate. For example, an average person's heart rate is between 70 to 75 beats per minute. So when you're doing a moderate activity, you're looking anywhere from between 105 beats per minute to 115 beats per minute. A simple way to, for example, if you don't have all the fancy material to measure your heart rate, you can always use this simple test. It's called the talk test. And what that is that as you're talking to another person, to tell if you're in the moderate level of exercising, you can still talk to the person without pausing for a breath. And you can still carry on the conversation even though you're still at the moderate rate. And so next, some examples of moderate exercises include walking 2 miles in 30 minutes, walking a little faster than usual in 15 minutes, walking stairs for 15 minutes. All those can give you a sense of generalization of what moderate exercise really is. The other type, vigorous exercise, is where you're exercising and where you're breathing hard and fast. And if you were to use the simple talk test, you wouldn't be able to carry on the conversation without pausing for a breath. And at this point, when you're exercising vigorously, your heart rate is above, on average, above 140 beats per minute. Now let's get into how exercise can boost the functions of the brain. One is boosting the memory, and when you have better memory, you, as a student, you tend to do better in school, right? You recall things better, and overall will help you in school. Ben Martinoga, who's a neuroscientist and a science writer, he did a controlled experiment with children, adults, and the elderly. He found that exercising for a certain amount of time, this part in our brain called the hippocampus, which I have a picture right here, and the hippocampus is a part of the brain that is the core of brain learning and memory, the memory system. And he found that exercising for this amount of time, he found that this part of the brain, the hippocampus, grows as they get more exercise. And when this part grows, and when this hippocampus grows, we tend to, our capacity to absorb information is better and clearer. He also found that exercise stimulates the brain by stimulating the growth of new connections, the wires in our brain. And the more connections we have in our brain, the faster things, the faster we process things and recall the information. Next point I want to share is that exercise helps improve concentration. And when you can concentrate better, you tend to do better in school, right? So, according to Anxiety and Depression Association of America, they conducted a study of students where they did 20 minutes of aerobic style exercises. Aerobic meaning like, it's just a fancy word for cardio, anything involving increase in heart rate or the breathing pace. They found that after the exercises over time, they found that the students have better attention spans, and they find that the students were better at ignoring distractions. Another thing that they found is that 20 minutes walking on the treadmill improved students' programming skills by 10%. And with that 10%, students can bump their learning rate. I pulled up another image from their website, the anxiety. From their website. They did an MRI scan of the brain after their study showing that walking on the treadmill for, I believe it was a couple of months, and they found better brain activity after exercising for each period. So as I leave you guys today, I hope that you guys can understand and see how exercising has an impact on how well we do in school. As far as relieving stress, I know that sometimes we get too much stressed out, and exercise would be a great way to deal with it. Thank you.
All right, Savannah, what'd you think?
I like the topic of it because, exercise is something that many young adults maybe aren't able to fit into their lives. But I don't like how he started out his speech, because I assume, just from his first sentence, I assumed it was going to be about maybe anxiety and how school causes it. I don't know, that's just what I thought. And maybe he just talks very peacefully, but he didn't seem very excited, which I totally understand. It's okay. But I wish maybe he showed a little more, what's the word? Enthusiasm about his topic, because he was just talking about, oh yeah, well this is how it helps this. Well, I wanted to hear, I wanted him to show us how to do stuff, I want to do jumping jacks, I'm crazy, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. And then I wish maybe he talked more about anxiety, because it was just kind of a glossed over topic. He did at the beginning, maybe he did talk about it, but his voice was just very monotone and I couldn't really hear. Well,
Mhm. All right, well, the rhetorical question I thought was okay as a device, but I also thought that the topic was going to be different. It sounded like it was going to be focusing on stress, and then it turns out that it's really about exercise. And there is a connection to stress in the first point, but the rest of the speech is really about different issues. So it felt a little deceptive. I did think that you clearly stated the topic near the beginning of the speech, and there was a pretty good preview of what was going to come up. So organizationally, it shouldn't be too hard to follow. You define the difference between moderate and vigorous exercise primarily in the degree of heartbeats, I guess, that it is that we're looking at, or whether or not we pass the talk test. And I appreciated your explanation of what the talk test is and giving us a couple of illustrations about how it might work. I do know that you got this information from someplace, but I don't know where that information happened to come from. I did get source citations later on for a couple of things concerning brain development, for instance, or ability to hold on to information as a result of exercise. But this was the thing that you were spending a lot of time talking about in that first section, and there wasn't any reference to where that came from. So I kind of thought the content on the first point was a little bit thin, even though it seemed to be the thing that you were launching us with, and you're dealing with anxiety information. The movement to the second point was relatively clear, so your transitions are identifiable, and they're moving us from point to point. Maybe they could be more graceful, but I didn't see anything that was problematic about it. The visuals, well, we got basically a couple of pictures of the brain. We got a drawing which had an identification of the hippocampus, and then we had the MRIs which showed us the difference between the active and the less active brain. And I think those were useful illustrations. I do think that you could tell us a little bit more about what it means. Like the first one isn't of critical importance, but the second one, the MRI, the brain activity, well, what is the brain activity indicative of? Our ability to think, our ability to hold on to information. Some of the things that you talked about as your secondary points should have been the things that were being illustrated by that particular point, and I thought that it was just a little underdeveloped from a visual perspective on this. I think you needed some additional graphics to make the point. From a delivery perspective, I think I understand exactly what Savannah's talking about. I think you apparently vigorously exercised before you came to class, and so you got rid of all your stress, anxiety, and you were just very low-key and calm, which is good for you probably because it maintains your sense of decorum and you're on track. But from the audience's point of view, I think we need a little bit more energy. We need to be engaged more. There needs to be a little bit of urgency. It just feels like I'm getting drawn through this very lethargic cruise through exercise and a couple of its benefits, and I don't feel like you came even close to moving past that talk test. That we're energized and involved. It seemed, like I said, very low key, and I think that that's a little bit problematic. All right, thank you.